What is up, and welcome back to another vlog where I'll be doing quick DIY on the BMW. And if you guys remember on the glow plug controller vlog, I mentioned that there were still two remaining errors, one being the AUC sensor and the other one being a missing alternator error. And I also mentioned that I had the new AU sensor en route, and well, here we go. I've got that new part that has just landed. So that will be the first attempt at getting one of those error messages cleared. And then we'll be looking at removing the alternator to get to the voltage regulator and hopefully getting a replacement part for that. So I've actually commenced stripping the alternator off the car, but what I'll do, I'll just put everything back together in mock-up fashion so I can explain to you guys a detailed way on how to get all those bolts and whatever else is connected to the alternator removed so that there's easy access to that voltage regulator. But before we get to working on the car, I'll just show you guys our new merchandise that we've had landed. So if anybody is interested, excuse me, my daughters were in here and they messed some yogurt, so I'll have to clean it up. But yeah, we do have these double-walled stainless steel travel mics in stock. If anybody is interested, hit us up. $2.50 a cup, and yeah, you'll have some advanced import auto parts merch that you can add to your guys' collection. So here we go with the first look of that new AUC sensor, and I do see that they've actually included a pigtail. So this is a new second-hand part, and the supplier has mentioned that when it was tested it was in good working condition, and I'm hoping that it is. So once we've got the auto plugged on and run diagnostics, hopefully that error will be cleared. So as I mentioned, the supplier included a pigtail, but as you can see down here, excuse the focus, the original connector and wiring is available, or at least it's in the car, and then that's the slot where the sensor just twists into. So let me just remove the pigtail and connector plug that the supplier sent with, and then we can have that new second-hand part fitted, and then we'll look at this mess over here. But as I said, I'm going to put everything back together as a mock-up and then just explain in detail how I removed the alternator. So here we go with that extra pigtail and connector plug removed. Here's the sensor. Now just a case of lining up the slots on the sensor, or the tabs with the slots on the mounting bracket, if I can call it that. Twist in and then plug in the connector, and there you go. One problem solved. Hopefully we'll check once we have that auto plugged in and we run diagnostics again. Okay, so now that we've got everything mocked up, except for the bolt, I started off by using my 13 socket, and I removed this bolt. And the reason for removing this bolt is so that you can disconnect this cable, and that just cuts any 12-volt current running through this cable from the battery to your alternator as well as to the starter, as you will be needing to remove this nut as well, so that you can then free up the alternator. And the last thing you want is for there to still be 12-volt current running through here and this cable touching onto any part of the engine bay or anything on the body that is grounded, because that will lead to shorting out one or more components in your engine bay or in your ECU, and that is a definite no-go. Next step, as I mentioned, is to remove this nut. And then place it safely. You have now freed that cable, and don't forget there's also this smaller one, so disconnect that. You've got this connector plug, which I believe okay, let's try that again. So you've got this connector plug, which I believe is connected to the IBS, the intelligent battery sensor, or somewhere it's connected in the system. But yeah, you want to remove that. So there's a little push tab over there, just squeeze, a little bit of wiggling, and there you go. The connector has been removed. So next step you want to do, if I recall, this is 16 heads, top and bottom. So you want to break those free before you look at releasing tension on the tensioner so that you can free up the belt. And if you guys don't know how to release the tension on the tensioner, then I'll leave the link in the description below, or I'll even leave a tag in the top right corner to the card that shows you how to actually release the tension, and also to just place, if you guys can see, there is this pin. So you need a pin that needs to be slotted in to ensure that the tensioner doesn't push back and your fingers don't get caught between the belt and the pulley. Okay, so here we go with my number 16 socket, and we'll just turn anti-clockwise. Obviously, like I said, I have done this already, so everything has broken free. And once you've got it loose, then you will take off the tension on the tensioner, put your pin in, slip the belt off. And yeah, if you guys do remove the belt entirely, just make sure you check how it is routed as well, because you don't want any issues when you have to put it back in place. So let me just remove the two bolts off camera quickly, and then I'll show you what I did afterwards to free the alternator from the mounting position. Okay, so here we go with that alternator having been broken free, and you'll see on the bottom here, that's the lower tab, or at least the lower mounting hole or ear. And on the back you've also got another one, and that actually secures it directly over that piece. And as I mentioned, I had already broken everything free, but what happened initially, it was sitting quite firmly, and I took my 4-pound hammer, which is over there, and ever so lightly gave some love taps just over here, knocking it to the side so that it could move. And then when I eventually got it to about this point here, you can see the top part is no longer touching. Then I used the 4-pound hammer on the back here, lightly gave some more love taps, just knocking it forward, and then knocking it this side again, knocking it back, and knocking it here, down again, and then over here again. I know it sounds very complicated, but eventually it loosened up the grip that was here and here on those lower lobes or ears, and then it allowed the alternator to shift completely to the side, causing it to break free. And I am now holding one loosened alternator with easy access to that rear cover where the voltage regulator is in. Okay, and then just so that you guys can see, this is the part number. Suppose this also helps for my records. As you can see, it is a Valio part, but I did know that after having seen a couple of other people's logs. So you've got these number 8 head screws, or not screws, rather mini nuts that need to be loosened, and then this cover just slips right off. Then you'll be able to have access to that voltage regulator. So let me just get my smaller socket, and then we'll get to removing that now. So here we go with that regulator, and I just need to, from my understanding, remove those 3 bolts, and then this should slide out, and we'll be able to see whether those brushes are worn on this regulator, and if that's the reason why we've got that missing alternator popping up on the auto every time I do run diagnostics. And just for anybody wanting to know what sort of socket is needed, I clearly have run out of metric sockets. I don't know what this actually is the equivalent to, but it's a 9/32 socket which fits over the bolts, and then should be able to loosen it. Going to be tricky with one end, but yeah, at least you guys know. Okay, bolt removed, and now moment of truth. Let's see if the regulator and the bushes is the issue. If not, then chances are we've got an even bigger issue sitting inside the alternator itself, which will probably mean replacement alternator if we cannot have this one refurbished. So fingers crossed guys, it is this regulator. That slid off way too easily. Oh man, look at those brushes. Non-existent. Yes, I'm hoping that that is going to be the solution. Fitting a new regulator. At least now we also know what the part number should be, or at least have a sample of what it must look like, and we should be able to get this part matched either at Master Parts or Goldwagen. So let's head on over there now and see if we can get a replacement. Okay, we're back, and I actually didn't manage to make it to Master Parts or Goldwagen, and that's because both places were already closed. So I had to wait until Monday, and thankfully we were able to source a replacement regulator at Diesel Electric. And although it's not the original Vallejo or Vallejo, and the only reason I went with a different brand is because the Vallejo or Vallejo is actually over 1,000 Rand. And I was able to get this Mobiletron, at least I think that's the name of the brand, at about half the price, or actually just a little bit more than half. So we are going to unbox the package quickly, do a side-by-side comparison, fit the replacement into the alternator, and then we'll do some diagnostics, drive the car around, and hopefully everything should be back to operating as it should be. Okay, so here we go with that new regulator unboxed, and we've got the two side by side. As you can see, there are some differences, this being the original Vallejo. This one has some sort of a silicone or paste over, and if we just flip them around, the replacement one has what appears to be a heatsink. And then what I do like about how they've manufactured this is that the brushes also have this cap, which I've already pressed the brushes in, so that when you put the regulator into the alternator, you will then just slide this cap off so that the brushes then make contact with the bearing, and then you just put this protective cover over to close everything up. So let's get to doing that now, then we can reinstall the power cables as well as the accessory belt, get that cover on as well, and then we can start up and check if everything is running smoothly before we end up doing the diagnostics. Okay, so just before I put in the new regulator, there's one other thing that I also noticed, and that is on the Vallejo or Vallejo, one of the brushes on the soldered part has got this, appears to be silicone, and on the replacement one, just get this to focus, you guys will see that it doesn't have. But if I zoom in a little bit closer, I'm not sure whether you can tell on the camera, but there is some form of a clear silicone which I see they have put over those soldered parts. So I'm hoping that if the idea behind putting this black silicone on or having the clear silicone, if the idea is to stop any sparking or arcing, I don't know what you would refer it to, but yeah, inside the case of the alternator itself, then I'm hoping that whatever they've done on the replacement one will be sufficient. So let me just remove the bolts that I put back into place, just to ensure that I do not lose them, and get to having the regulator inside the alternator. Alright, so here we go with that new regulator fitted. And one other thing that I actually forgot to mention to you guys while I was off camera was I actually ended up cleaning the contact on the bearing itself. Just Just see if I can get it to focus better. So yeah, you'll see over here on top, and then at the bottom where it's slightly darkened, that's where the contact points are. And what I did was I just took a microfiber cloth with a flathead screwdriver, pressed it against here while the alternator was lying on its side, spun up the pulley so that the bearing and the microfiber cloth were in constant contact, and that's just what cleaned up some of the residue that had built up onto the bearing itself. So now that we've got all of that done, I can just pull out that little plastic piece that I mentioned earlier, and as you can see, the new brushes are now making contact. So when you are spinning up the pulley, it is in constant contact with this bearing. So yeah, let me get to putting the cover back on and getting the alternator installed, and then we can do a startup and see if everything is running as it should be. And then when you are tightening up these mini nuts, here's a neat little trick. Once you've got your socket on, just place the alternator on the pulley, spin it up, there you go. Now you can just tighten it down correctly or securely. I don't have any torque specs, so I'm just going to be tightening by hand, and once I've got it pretty much tightened, I'll just give it 1 or 2 additional turns just to ensure that that cover is on securely. Okay, and just to show you guys, we've got everything reconnected again, pulley belt on, the IBS connector plug in, power cables connected there, as well as here. Don't worry, I don't have this thing running. So now all we need to do is just fire up the car, make sure that everything is running smoothly, that we don't have any error messages popping up. And once we're done, then we'll get to doing diagnostics and just clearing those error codes that have existed previously. And then fingers crossed, we will have sorted out the remaining issues on the BM. We are back with the auto, and as I mentioned, I'm going to be running diagnostics, so I'm hoping that we will have sorted out all those issues, or at least the remaining ones. Please excuse the glare, guys. It is a cracker of a sunny day out, so yeah, going to be a little bit tricky, or at least I hope it won't be tricky, but at the moment there is a bit of glare going on. So yeah, let's just see what we are able to show while running this diagnostic. Okay, so here we go again with that AUC sensor error. Light modules are just as a result of the LED bulbs that I swapped into the halo rings, and I actually ended up putting the car into daytime or daylight running mode, and I actually forgot that if I do that, then the angel swish part on the headlight, the orange part, doesn't actually light up because of either a voltage issue or me needing to code in the fact that I've gone to LEDs. So yeah, that's just my own silliness. I forgot about that, and that's why we've got that error. But I'm hoping that once we've cleared it, it will remove the issue, or at least that fault code, and then when I am running the lights as normal, that shouldn't be popping up again. But the most important one is that missing alternator. So let's just see, once we read the codes, make sure that's the only one. Closed system, not too sure why that's popping up again, considering that we replaced that glow plug controller. But I'm hoping that's probably just something that has popped up as a result of not having driven the car for a little bit of a while now. So yeah, let's just clear those codes quickly and start up the car. Oops. and then we'll run the diagnostics again to see if anything does pop up. Okay, so let's fire up the car now and see what pops up. Just looking in over here, we've got 14.15 volt reading, so that's already a good sign. And no more error messages. Yes, man, yes, that was the victory I was hoping for. Seems everything is as it should be, and now the car should be running 100%. Let's just activate the aircon, press auto, just to make sure that the AUC sensor does not come up with any error messages. There we go, we have a pass. Let's read the codes. Voltage is holding quite nicely over there, alternating as it should be for when increased voltage is needed to charge up the battery under load. Let's turn the aircon off. There we go, you can see voltage is regulating quite nicely. So we have officially sorted out the BM and the remaining faults, which I am super happy about, and I think this is a good time to end the vlog. So I hope that this DIY has really been able to help anybody who is struggling with similar issues, and if not, then hopefully whatever is affecting your guys' cars, you'll be able to sort it out after doing your own investigation or diagnosis. But until the next one, guys, remember, your bold, your rules, stay motivated. Cheers.